few weeks ago, Levi texted me if I can do a shear over the Pesach break, and it went into one of the files. So Chalamoid, I went through my text and said, "Can I do a shear?" So I prepared a shear on the Kava Taida, on the crossing the national date line. I once spoke, it was a nice story. I figured we'll go through the Makairis. I texted him back, yeah, give a share. I come back, he said, we just found somebody for next week already, so do the week afterwards. Thanks to Avi. Nosy Avi wants to know, what are you giving a share on next week? I said, giving on the date line. He says, because it's giving a share on that. So I said, no, I didn't know that actually. And I said, he's first, so he'll cross first, and then he'll give the share. So I figured, give a share, if not for right after Pesach, at least Pesach Sheini. So we're waking up, and you want to give also a mazel tov.
I was planning on giving the Pesach Sheini.
Oh, that's what happened. To the move.
And other faults as well.
Yeah. Mazel tov on the move, and Baruch Hashem, Zeichet to Anes, and maybe the schus of the shir. The Rebbe always brings down schus harabim esayatam. Mamish to move out a few days before the Sreifa. So since he still had the name, at least the bracha nach Sreifa, Merayach, he left the zichah from the zichah vinchen. Nice to cash in. Okay, so don't get scared by we're not going to be reading everything inside over here. It's just some of the resources. On the first side, the top is the Psukim and Parshas Ba'al Loischa that begin describing the little parsha over here called Pesach Sheini. And the Psukim say that the Yidden were told to make the Korban Pesach, the Moyadoi, and then there came Yidden over there, and they said, Pasuk Vav, Vayenosh, the people that were Tamei, and they came and they told them specifically to Moshe, Anachnu Tmeim Nefesh Adam, Lama Nigara, the famous quote, why should we lose out? It's not fear. And Moshe says, stop, let me see what the Eibishter says. And like Rashi said over here, how lucky we are that he's a student that's guaranteed to get an answer from his Rebbe. And the Eibishter says the famous mitzvah that you write, there's a second chance, it could be Pesach Sheini. But those are the psukim. So we look at the Rashi, which will be crucial for the Hemshech Hashir, the highlighted part of the Rashi. So the Rashi on Lamani Gara. Rashi says, there's actually there's two Fabrengas of the Rebbe on the discussion, the first part of this Rashi, because there's many gears as what he said, but that's maybe for a different shir, for the Pesach Sheini shir, the Rabbi Abi. But Imdu ve'eshma, stand alone, listen, Talmud Muftach, the Shmoy Rabbi. We have a student that's guaranteed his Rebbe always answers him. Ashri Yilud Ishish Kach Muftach. How lucky are that Moshe was ultimately, as sad as he was a human being, that he was promised. Shkol's man, which is also important for later on, because Moshe was special that literally not just the Eibishter, whenever he wanted to pop up to Moshe, but it worked vice versa. Whenever Moshe was interested, he was always able to press the intercom and talk to the Eibishter. Here's what Rashi says. We know that the schus of Moshe, the Torah came through him. Moshe is the sinner that the Eibishter's Dvar Hashem comes through Moshe Rabbeinu. So just like Moshe taught the entire Torah, Pesach Sheini should be no different. And it really should have been that way. So then why did the story happen, sort of say, backwards? At first, no, they can't. And then they came complaining. And Moshe said, let me find out an Eibishter. So Rashi says, these people were Zoicha, that this mitzvah and this Pesach Sheini should be said to them, because there's a cloud, people that have a special schus, the rich get richer, and Ruchnis works the same way also. You have a schus, you get schus, and so they got this schus. Now, in this Rashi, this is not Lashon Rashi of his own. This is really the Sifri. Many people say that there's a depth to the Sifri, and which is, and not just that they were lucky, so it was this gala through them, but more than that, they got publicity out of them. That the way they understand the Sifri, and there's a different size in the Sifri, the way they understand the Sifri is these people became famous because of the story. The Eibishter wanted these people to have a big schus, and therefore this parish has become similar to, we know, the Bnei Slavka, right? Everybody knows that became the parish of Bnei Slavka. Okay, good. Who were these people? Who were these people that that sort of created this new mitzvah? Who were they? By you Anosh, there were certain people. So there's a famous Gemara, Gemara Sukkah, and that's the following thing, what the Gemara brings down, that there are actually three opinions, and it cites some of the reasons of why we choose where they are. So we have in the next quote, we have the Gemara Sukkah, Daf Chaf Hei, and the Gemara tells us who are these people. So we have opinion number one, where basically it says we know that the Yidden. Is it supposed to be this? Okay. Someone Zoom bombing us. We already had those experiences in yeshiva. We don't need a Pesach Sheini for that. I'll turn the screen the other way. So that basically says that we know that Yosef made the Yidden promise, I'll take them out of Mitzrayim and bury him in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, there were Yidden that were carrying Yosef around. So therefore, there were Yidden that were coming. And obviously, these are very special Yidden, because carrying Yosef Tzaddik, which was the source of encouragement throughout the Galus Mitzrayim. Good, that's opinion number one. Excellent. Rabbi Kiva says, no, it wasn't them, not other great people. Because they were called in to save the day, the whole story of Pasha Sheini. They were burnt, but their bodies were left over there in the Mishkan. So they called Nadav Avihu. Nadav Avihu were taken out, and now they had to take out their bodies. They became Tamei. So therefore, they needed now Pesach Sheini. Okay, it's pretty high level people over here. Comes along Rabbi Yitzchak and he says, I'll tell you why I disagree with them. Doesn't go to his opinion first. He agrees that it's a backup. He says it's if I agree with the first opinion, it was impossible. They can't say we couldn't do the Pesach. They were able to already become Torah. So they had their chance, so they don't deserve a second chance. And the Rashi explains shortly. If you follow second opinion, they also had a chance to become Torah ready. Therefore, by default, I have no choice to say, rather, these were people that regular Chevra Kadisha, they dealt with somebody that they had to take care of and bury. They were tummy. In fact, he has a deal for the pasuk. It says today we can't bring the Karban Pesach, which means mamish their bad luck. It was punked a week before Pesach, and tonight they're going to become Torah. And theoretically, if they could be makriv today, it's already tonight, Pesach, they could already eat the Karban Pesach. It's just not fair that they can't be part of the Karban in the afternoon because they're tummy. Which seems to be they're complaining as a mamish now. We'll see. Well, that's exactly. Okay, now Rashi explains. It's not just saying they could have, should have, it didn't. Rashi explains to us in the bottom source over here what happened over here that they could have been Torah, therefore they don't deserve, so to say, a Pesach Sheini. And it starts in this in the end of the first line. It says, third line. Rashi gives us a simple calculation. Everybody agrees, which is almost everybody agrees, that the Mishkan was set up, which we follow his opinion. That's why we have the Nisim, the whole beginning of Nisan, because 7 days before they were preparing Shiva Sinei Maluyim, starting on Ishchedesh Nisan. Every single day was the Chanukas Mizbeach, because of Chanukas and Mishkan. So the Mishkan went up on Aleph Nisan. Sorry, Sheini loy sarif alazabam part. The second day is when they already had the on Beis Nisan or Choshev Day. On Beis Nisan, we already had the part. Anybody tell me could have mishpris today, and therefore Rashi makes a simple calculation. The people that were carrying Yosef's Aron, you have now 13 days. If you 7 days become Torah, you have from Beis Nisan till Erev Pesach. Michelle Baltzofan happened when? When did the story happen? When did it get burnt? On Ishchedesh Nisan, the first day. And he points out that the people were carrying the Aron of Yosef all the time. So Rashi says it's not true. They only carried him when they traveled. The Yidden were on stop from Erev Matan Torah, Iyar, or beginning of Sivan, the year left Mitzrayim, until Chaf Iyar the following year. They didn't move anywhere. They stood by Har Sinai. That was the longest station the Yidden were. And Eibazoi, they put down the Aron of Yosef in a tent, and that was there. So if talking about people that didn't have a chance, these guys already didn't touch his Aron already since the Chodesh Sivan. Okay, you got to assume time they became Torah before she was awesome, but aside point. So the point being is, if they didn't become Torah yet, that's just carrying the velvet for these people. Therefore, he says that's the simple thing. He said, I understand it's a beautiful shot you have, but I don't think that would warrant a Pesach Sheini for them. Therefore, you must conclude it was people that's Mace Mitzvah. Okay. So if you walk away from the Gemara, you seem like that's it. It's over. The conversation is over. It wasn't Aaron Shal Yosef. It wasn't Michelle Voltzofen. It was the Mace Mitzvah. But many times, Sayin Chassidus and Sayin other Gemaras, Gemara talks about it, and it's far from conclusive. Many times, Aaron Shal Yosef, those that were carrying the Aaron. Yeah, some people say it was a Mace Mitzvah. It seems like the conversation didn't end over here, and it was always intriguing me. I taught in my early years. I used to teach the Gears of Sukkah also. The first year was teaching over here, so I always thought it's over. This is the opinion. It's not true. Many places in Torah, it's brought down that all three opinions are still accepted. So it bothered me. And the guy had the final opinion. He didn't just say his opinion. He said why I disagree with the first two. It was pretty clear. So I started looking things up a little bit, and I want to base it on a very beautiful Rashi. The Rashi in Parshas Kisisa, which is the second side of the thing. The pasuk over here is counting the Master Shekel that Yidden gave, which was used later on to melt to make the Adonim of the Mishkan. And the pasuk calculates over there how we counted Klal Yisrael to that. It's a very, very famous Rashi. It's a beautiful Rashi on this pasuk. And Rashi says, this is the top of the second side, that this was a tzivui that we had to count Klal Yisrael after the tzivui Mishkan, which was happened after Ma'aseh Egel, for the nations of the Mishkan after Ma'aseh Egel. So Rashi says, because obviously the Eibishter felt very bad, he didn't was like this flock, and then there was a Magefa, he didn't pass away, he wants to count. Okay, beautiful. Let's go to the highlighted thing over here. I don't want to waste every part of this Rashi. It's a beautiful Rashi. I want to read it up. But Rashi points out this has clearly happened before they built the Mishkan. They used the silver. They used it to make the Adonim, the sockets of the Keroshim. And Rashi has a simple question, that when you tally the numbers over here, and you tally the time to count the Yidden after the second, which is in Parashat Midbar, you're going to ask the question, is it possible that the calculation of both of them, both of them was counting Yidden? You ended up with 603, 100,000, 550. And this was seemingly over a span of 2 years. So it's just impossible. Rashi forget about people passing away, because if you're counting people after 20, some people have to have a birthday. So therefore, what's going on over here? A span of 2 years is the exact same number. So Rashi's dealt with the problem with the birthday. Rashi comes up with an interesting thing, that for Yidden leaving Mitzrayim, the year changes Nisan time. That's why here they left Nisan. 13 months later is already the second year. But Tishrei is when you go for the birthday. It's like we have in the kids' school. If you're before January, this class, you don't look at your birthday. If you were before Tishrei, you were 20, you're a part of it. Therefore, he says it was the same. It was 7 months apart. The same people that were 20 right after Yom Kippur, which was Tishrei, those same people were 20 7 months later in year. Very nice, but still, what about people that passed away? So Rashi doesn't say it over here, but the Medrash said it straight out. It was a nes after the Eibishter said there wasn't one Yid who passed away that entire time. From then past the Kamas HaMishkan for quite a while, till the story of the Meraglim, they started passing away. The Ramban goes bonkers on Rashi, and the Ramban has a tremendous Ramban, and he says impossible. And all the defenders of Rashi, these beautiful of it's called the Gararye and the Mizrahi, and they say, no, it was a nes, and they prove out it's not a problem. It's not a problem. So the common consensus of most opinions and most Rishonim, besides the Ramban, is that nobody passed away in that time. It's not an option anymore. An option. It can't be a mess mitzvah. There's no one who just dropped dead. Didn't happen. If you follow that opinion. So what are we left with? We're left with the other two opinions. Either it was Noiser and Shal Yosef, or it was Michelle Vatov. So therefore, that's number one why they did not accept. It means you can simply put them aside and say they follow the opinions, which is the common accepted opinion, and those that try to argue with Rashi, everybody says it's a famous medrash. It's a medrash Midbar Rabbah. Say Azaydos, Azay given. Okay, so now if we put him aside, we're left with these two. So what are they arguing out? So let's go back to the original Rashi. Rashi said there will be Zoycha, that the name will come famous in these things. Do we know who the Noisei Arena Shel Yosef was? We don't say. We'll get to that in a second. We don't say. The Gemara, Michal Valtzofin, we know who they are. So there would be a check on their backs. The pasuk highlighting, hey, other exclusive that they had. Beautiful. So in this following little quote in the Sanhedrin, the Gemara actually has an interesting machlokes side note, but the Gemara over there brings this. It's always quoted back to the source. What actually happened to Nadav Avihu? So the Kinderlachen then learned in school that the waste of fire came out, it went into the nostrils and consumed them. But there is a machlekes in the Gemara if they were totally nisraf lagamri, to the extent that finished the pasuk left with ash, mamish totally consumed. Some people say it was just like the ruchnistic aspect that the shamas went out, but their bodies were kind. So this is not my word. This is clearly some of the achronim say that it just falls to that side. Those that say it can't be Mishal Voltzofen, they follow the opinion of this Gemara that they were totally burnt if they weren't Matam anymore. There was nothing left of them. Even Tosha says maybe as part of the skeleton. Tosha tries to defend him. So that would be, I can't side with you. There's no tumah there. Forget about making you famous. There's no tumah there. So it must be the Noisei Arena Shel Yosef. Other people will say we follow the opinion that it was more of a spiritual Sreifa, and therefore the goof was still Matam. Okay. So we're sort of on equals over here. Decide with your opinions. Who were the Noisei Arena Shel Yosef? So that we have the Gemara Saita, and the Gemara Saita tells us it's a beautiful Mishnah. It's the third thing, the third on the third page over here. I just want to know. I need a time. We have no man to eat over here. Tell me what my timing over here is.
Generally till 10:15.
What?
Generally 10:15.
And you guys went overtime. I'm not going to take for people that were pesheya. So I want to know from people what. No, what's the story over here? Hey, just tell me. Just tell me. Okay. So this is part of a beautiful Mishnah, and I'm going to start about 5 lines into the third line over there. Gemara says it's like an interesting test. It's Yosef Zacha. Yosef was Zeicha to bury his father, and even though all the Shvatim were beautiful, but no one was as great as Yosef. Sai is Yosef Atzadik, Yamshach Yaakov, Sai with the Mishnah Melech, Shnemar, Vayal Yosef Likberes Aviv. So Torah gives him the credit. Vayal Moikam Recha Gam Paroshim. Now, things get compounded in a positive way. Milanu Gadol Mi Yosef, Shalim Asik Vayel Moshe, the greatest of all people. In that schus of him taking care of his father, we compounded that. And out of all people, Moshe was a Moshe Zachav, Yosef. And this he took care of Yosef, and the Eibishter himself buried him. Okay, let's go into the Gemara. So the Gemara is describing how did Moshe end up with Yosef's thing? They couldn't find out where he was. They found Sarach Pas Asher. One opinion says that she told him he was buried in the Nile, so he put down the parchment, and that's how Pastor Michal got it. Another opinion over here, that Rabbi Nosson says it was one of those big pyramids, or those big caves of Malachim, cabinets of Malachim, how you cover. Moshe stood over there and he said, Herzachai and Yosef, time has come, that the promise that he said, we don't know these things are made with caves and chambers, who knows what's going on. If you pop out, it's good. If not, we're clear. So the whole thing, when shaking, he comes popping out. Third line. From the entire duration of the middle, all 40 years, going one by one, going side by side. And people will pass by, see the whole procession. We think it's led by the Tzanan Yaakov, the Amud Anan. No, there was the Shechina, the Aron, and Yosef's Aron. And everybody asked, what's this? One is Yosef Atzadik, one is the Shechina, one is the Aron. Over here. Amru, he would say, because Yosef is the embodiment and the epitome of the epitome, ultimate of Kima Torah. He had all trials. He lived in Mitzrayim. He's the real testament that Yiddishkeit is emes, right? That's where Yosef was the Tzaddik. Kiyim zeh, kol mashkas b'zeh. Now the Gemara asks, Moshe Yisrael Abbas, I think Yidden would just let Yosef go. Yosef was the source of encouragement. Moshe has to do it. Moshe was busy, was a busy person. See, in fact, after Moshe passed away, he didn't take over. After Yosef, Shalom b'nei Yisrael in Mitzrayim, they buried him in Shechem. And what about his kids? His kids would have took over. Here's the key. The Gemara says, The last two lines. Amru. Yidden says, first his children says, let the Yidden take care of him after Moshe passed away. It's more coveted for our father. But Klal Yisrael deals with it more than just the family. So, and in addition, Klal Yisrael said, it's better that Moshe takes care of him. So according to simple pshat of the Gemara, and the Gemara says later on in the site that we have to learn out that Tumah could be part of the Mishkan because Yosef was kept in Moshe's tent. Oh, we kept him with him. The term of Imichitzasi comes here. Says Lashon over there. Imoy with him. The Gemara says Imichitzasi. That this term, this promise that big Rebbes gave that to do this thing and you'll get to be my mechitza, my Gan Eden, comes from this term of Yosef. According to the simple pshat, Moshe was the one who dealt with Yosef all the time. Now, clearly, the pasuk says that Moshe was not the one who complained over here. Moshe was said, I'm going to stand and wait what the Abish says. So it doesn't fit. So there's a yesh shleimer over here that some achronim want to say that Moshe Rabbeinu, since he took the Abish all the time, asked certain people to do it on his behalf. So this is where sort of we stand up. If it is to make their names more famous, Michelle Baltzaf are the only ones that are famous because Yosef's name was famous as it is. The whole Torah was said in his name, so it wasn't giving them any more credit, which is what Rashi said. And primarily, if it's followed the opinion that there was a miracle that no one passed away, then it can't even be the Meis Mitzvah. At least they have what to realize. That's how we end up. That no one's settled. Everybody has their issues, and all three are always brought in Chassidus. It's just to point out on the final thing over there. This is an interesting Gemara in Gittin. Which parshas was said when they put up the Mishkan, and Levi claims Levi was one of the Chachamim of the Gemara. He claims that parshas Tuma was also said then, which Rashi says Hara Duma was actually said, including Pesach Sheini on Aleph Nisan, which then the whole story, but it doesn't make sense. If 2 weeks before Pesach, so therefore Rashi brings down, you've seen the last highlight, that according to Levi, it was just a theoretical question, meaning they asked, what if we don't become tired? What's going to be done? There's always going to be kratches. There's always going to be lastminute.com was owned by Lubavitch. There's always going to be us. So what's the sign? So he said, theoretical question. Good question. According to him, Pasuk pulls the whole year out of the Pesach Sheini. There was no drama. There was no nothing. This is all in the middle of the celebration of Chapar L'chaim and Aleph Nisan. They said, what's the sign if we have a hangover for 2 weeks and don't become tired? So the Rebbe, obviously, those that watched the video last night, was beautiful, inspiring. I mean, you guys should watch it. I was talking to Likus Mamish, beautiful Fabrengen, Pesach Sheini. It's a beautiful Fabrengen of the Rebbe. So the Rebbe takes some of these Nekudas application. Today, everything's about an app. Number one, there's the first Fabrengen in the Pesach Sheini. The Rebbe had the Chassidim, and the Rebbe says we don't use the Lashon Arin in Kabbalah. Arin represents locked in, and it represents a high level, representing bris, and usually we don't use those terms. But only Yosef HaTzadik, which even when he had his Nesoyin, he ended up containing himself, so his bris was totally good. The only tzaddik on those levels you could use lashon of this, and the Rebbe, which is obviously showing on the essence of a tzaddik. And the Rebbe is demanding of Chassidim that we have to be the Noisei Reina Shel Yosef. It's demanding of the Chassidim. Every chassid has to feel. The Rebbe is taking what is almost agreed by everybody. Moshe Rabbeinu's job to carry the orange Yosef. And the Rebbe said every chassid has to feel the achrayus to take that thing, which means simply we have to carry the Rebbe's inyanim. We have to follow the Rebbe's takanos. The Rebbe takes this is Pasha Torah number one. Then the Rebbe says in a beautiful by Neshei Chabad, the 10th year, Tafshin Chapei, the Rebbe spoke to Neshei Chabad, and the Rebbe had two questions. We'll conclude with this. The Rebbe says, question number one is they seem to trip over themselves. They started off wrong. If you're a lawyer, you start off with the problem, and then you blame yourself if you want. You start off over here, I'm guilty. It's not fair. Come and say, listen, we have a problem. We have a problem. We need to bring a common Pesach. Whatever. We're Tommy. What do we do about it? Why are you starting off Nachat Meim Nefesh Adam? Why are you bringing it out? In addition, if this is part of Judaism, why did they have to wait for them to come? The Rebbe says two things. The Rebbe said it doesn't weaken their taina, Adrab, this is the whole Taina is based on that. And the Taina, the Rebbe said, is relevant to every person's avodas Hashem, which is they still this. Certain karbanis, Klal Yisrael has to bring. You have the representatives, the Kaidim do the base. I mean, there's for Klal Yisrael. I have to bring my own carbon. I do it when I want, when I'm available, when I go to the base of English. Over here, the Eibush just said every Yachid has to bring a carbon, but it has to be on the same day. So therefore, it has to be a carbon Sibra and Yachid at the same time. Everybody has to bring on an Erev Pesach. So they told the Eibush there, how could the world that you created contradict your rots? You created a world, and naturally, you're supposed to be eating that Passover. Even if we take the opinion, no one did. And even if you follow this opinion, this old theoretical question, they said, how can you create a mitzvah that can never, ever be fulfilled in entirety? There's never going to be a time, according to natural occurrences that you created, that will be the entire Klal Yisrael bring a carbon on. There's got to be someone who's going to be tummy. So there's a stereo from the world, and the world accepted what the Eibishter wants. That's what's bothering. And that's what he said. You created this existence that people are tummy. So how could it be? The Eibishter said, you're right. You can't have a mitzvah that should not be b'shleimus. So for those that don't fit into that, there'll be a Pesach Sheini. So the Rebbe says, so if the Eibishter wants that the mitzvah should be perfect, why did you wait for them to complain? The Rebbe said, beautiful. The Rebbe said, this is an answer to people that tie it to me all the time. Why does the Eibishter make it so hard? There's so much struggles. I'm trying so hard. Every time I try, there's another downfall. The Rebbe says, the husband wants to go learn in a Kenish, the wife wants to do Tanakh mitzvah, should worry about the kids. A problem that people write to me and people have MS and tinnitus. And as long as it didn't bother them, the packet does not fit into the realm of mitzvah. That's it. He left out. When a Yid comes tiny and says it bothered me, the Eibishter will make it work, but they'll give you a second chance. We'll extend the barriers. He said, this is the answer. This is the takeaway. That the Yid is Negeyo in a month. You don't have to figure out how. That's the Eibishter. This creates a sinner that whatever your Taka want to do, the Eibishter should make it happen. Sure.